Hey guys, welcome to Field Sketch. Today we're going to talk about LiPo batteries. It's not going to be an all-inclusive science lesson about all the chemical makeup, but basically best practices. Now there's differences of opinions and some people will disagree with some of the stuff that I'm going to say today. But what I want to share with you is some things that I've learned over the years about how to take care of LiPos, what they like, what they don't like, and how you should look at them. So first off, let's talk about each cell. This battery is a single cell LiPo. It's 3.7 volts per cell. Alright, we'll say when it's dead, it's 3.7 volts per cell. Okay, so a single cell is going to be 3.7, and then when it's fully charged, it's going to be 4.2 volts in this cell. You notice it only has one lead. That is the discharge lead, so whatever model you put it in, you plug that in, you discharge it. Whenever you charge it through that lead as well. Alright, so it's going to be 3.7 volts. Alright, the next step up is going to be a 2-cell. This is a 2-cell battery, 450 milliamp. The milliamp is how much capacity or how much voltage, juice, current that you want, that it will store, however you want to call it, but that it'll store for use in your model. Alright, but if you notice, it's got two leads. It's got the discharge lead or the charge lead, but then it's also got a balance lead on there. Okay, and so each one is going to be a cell. It'll be 3.7 volts per cell, and it'll have a lead with probably a large connector here to charge with. But then when you go to a 2-cell, basically it's two single cell batteries that are wired in series. Okay, so now before we talk about that, let's look at series versus parallel. You've got two cells. If you hook the positive, and this is negative, this is positive, and this is negative. Let's say you have a connector up here. You connect, well, let's do this in red so you can see it better. Let's say you connect the red to this side, and then you come over here and you take this positive and you connect it to this side, and then you go to the negative sides of the battery and you connect the negative here and the negative here. Then you've just wired these batteries in parallel. Another way to look at it would be if you had the battery here and it's positive here and it's negative here, and you had the other battery here and this is positive and negative. You would hook the positive to the positive, and then you have a positive, and you have a negative to the negative, and you have a negative. Okay, and so that will be your voltage. The milliamps is the amount of current that it will store, or amount of voltage that it will store, and in this particular case it's 600. So this cell is 600, and this cell is 600. So the voltage would still be 3.7 volts because it's a single cell, but now it's twice as deep, so you would have 1200 milliamps or milliamp hours. Okay, alright, so now that's parallel. Alright, we're going to put this here. Alright, now the way these cells are wired, they're wired in series. Okay, so you've got the same cells here, 3.7 volts. This cell here, 3.7 volts. You'll have to excuse my artwork. But in this situation where the connector is here, you take the positive from this side and connect it to the positive, and then you take the negative from this side and connect it to the positive from this side. Alright, then the other side will be negative, and that negative goes into the connector. So what the current does is it will pass from one side through this cell, and then come through here, through this cell, and then back over to the connector. Alright, in this situation, what you're going to have is twice the voltage with the same milliamps. Okay, so instead of, like in the other illustration, we had two 600 milliamp batteries, and it doubled it to 1200. In this situation, it's going to be 600 milliamps that you will have, but it will be at twice the voltage. So 2 times 3.7, it would be 7.4 volts for a 2-cell. Okay, and when you wire cells in series like this, you want to make sure and try to keep the cells at the same voltage as the other cells in the battery. So to do this, they put this balance plug on there. All right, Now on the balance plug, we'll blow it up so it's easier to see, you're going to have, on a 2-cell, you're going to have, usually it's going to be a black wire, and then the next one will be a red wire, alright, and the next one will be a red wire. Some manufacturers do all different colors, like if you look at this one, it's a black wire, cell 1 is a yellow, cell 2 is blue, and cell 3 is red, so you can differentiate between them. But the first wire, usually black, will be your ground wire, okay. The first cell, if you measure between these with a voltmeter, you're going to get 3.7 volts between the ground wire and the first cell. If you measure from the ground wire to the second cell, you're going to get 7.4. Alright, if you continued this out, then this balance plug, that would be your ground, 1 cell, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is what this pack is here, is a 6S. If you ever want to know, if let's say your label is gone, you ever want to know what kind of battery or what size it is, always look at the balance plug, and if it's got a ground wire and 2 wires, then it's going to be 2S or 2-cell. Alright, a 3-cell is going to have 4 wires, the ground wire and 1 wire for each cell. If you follow this same logic, 3.7 for the first one, 7.4 for the second one, the next one will give you 11.1 volts, the next one will be 14.4, and then 18.5, and then 22.2 volts. Alright, and it's possible to tap into this and use this voltage for other things, and we'll get to that probably later in another video. But the important fact is that this 5,000 milliamp pack is made up of 6 cells wired in series like this. So from the ground wire, if you measure between these 2 large discharge leads, if you measure here to here with a voltmeter, you're going to get 22.2 volts. Now this is when it's discharged, if we're going 3.7, so obviously it would be 6 times 4.2, and that would be your charge voltage. But this one would be 22.2, and then this cell here is a 4S, so it's a 4S pack, and then this one's 2S, they make 3S, you know, and so on. Now, when you run larger models, they'll take 2 of these 6S's and run them in series, which turns it into a 12S, or twice this, which will be 44.4 volts for the larger helicopters. Alright, so now a couple things about this. LiPos hate heat. We'll talk about best practices or favorite practices or good practices. Best practice in care of your LiPos. LiPos hate heat. And if you can get this one thing in your mind, LiPos hate heat, that will help you in saving a lot of money and saving your batteries and taking care of your batteries. Lots of things contribute to the heat that destroys them. Overcharging them, okay. That doesn't happen as much now because a lot of the chargers won't overcharge their smart chargers, and they'll read the battery and they don't overcharge. However, you can overcharge them. You can set it up on some of the older ones or put it on a different kind of battery that doesn't check for LiPo. In that situation, you can overcharge it and cause a fire. These things can be dangerous unless they're taken care of like they're designed. You can over discharge it. Alright, by over discharging, you would draw it down past the 3.7. Remember, 3.7 volts is dead, 4.2 is fully charged. Alright, so when you discharge it, there's different ways to find out how much, and we won't go into all that, but you don't want to draw these down past 3.7 volts. Some guys say 3.5, 3.6. 3.7 is where I like to have my cutoff. I like to bring them down from the air at 3.8 volts actually, and then we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you over discharge it, it causes heat. The other way to discharge it is to discharge it at too high of a rate. and when I say too high C rate, each battery has a C rating on it. This Turnigy battery here is a 5.0 or a 5 amp, 5,000 milliamp. It says 40 to 50 C discharge. When you look at this pack, this is a 5 amp pack. So to charge it, that is its capacity, is 5 amp or 5,000 milliamp. And when you charge it at 1 C, you charge it at its capacity, you charge it at a 5 amp rate, and usually it'll take around about an hour to charge it. If you charge it at 2C, you'll put 10 amps into it, which will take half the time, and so on. If you charge it at 4C, then you're putting in 20 amps, okay? So if you overcharge it, or by charging it too fast, or you over discharge it by drawing it too low, or draw it at too high of a C rate. This says 40 to 50 C, so if you hook it to a model that draws 70 C or more than this amp rating is, it will start to build heat. And you'll destroy your pack, if not catch it on fire and burn your model as well. Alright, so overcharge, over discharge, too high of a C rate. Alright, one thing that these batteries do love is to be broken in. Alright, and so when you get a new pack, you don't want to put it in your model and run it wide open. You want to put it through a break-in period. And different guys do this at different rates. What I do is I charge mine at 1C, discharge it at 1C, or sometimes 2C depending on the kind of charger, and discharge it at 2C, but I run it 5 cycles before I put it in the model to be used. And that's just what happens is you have internal resistance in these batteries that are at a certain level when you get them new, and if you balance these things and discharge and charge them for 5 cycles, what it'll do is it'll reduce that internal resistance and allow the battery to flow more current without building up heat. Alright, and so there's different ways to check the IRs or the internal resistance. When you hook it to a battery, or you hook it to a motor or a light bulb or anything, that current that flows through a resistance, and that's what lights a light bulb, is the resistance to the current. But they have internal resistance. How it's made, what kind of materials it's made out of, affects how much current that it can flow. Some of the batteries will be 20C, which is a lower discharge. The ones I fly in my helicopter are 45C, so they're designed to discharge a lot faster rate. Alright, so you want to break them in, and guys have tracked this and they've done studies on this, and batteries that have been broken in don't build up as much heat, they last much longer, you get more cycles out of them. You want to store them in a cool place. Some guys store them in a refrigerator. Some people say they put them in a freezer. I haven't tried that, but the refrigerator, I keep mine on the concrete floor in the garage. Usually stays about 60 degrees, 70 degrees. But the cooler the better. Now anything that contributes to heat will cause them to start to break down. Alright, the other thing is the 80% discharge. Alright, and what do I mean by 80% discharge? You don't want to discharge your pack past 80% of its capacity. Okay, what is capacity? Back to the 5 amp. On this one it's 5,000. Let's say you have a 1,000 milliamp hour battery. Then 80% of 1,000 is going to be 800. So you want to leave, you don't want to draw out less than or more than 800 milliamps, and you want to leave 200 in the pack. Alright, some guys don't like to draw it down that far, but that's a good rule of thumb to go by, and that makes the batteries last longer. The other thing is, when you charge these, you want to balance charge them. And what that does is, as it's charging this pack, now some chargers you can just plug in this charge lead or discharge lead and put the current in there, and it will charge this pack to the right voltage, but it doesn't know what's going on with each cell. The smarter chargers, the higher end chargers, you plug the battery lead in here, and you can charge it, and it monitors each cell as it goes in, and different settings on different chargers let it choose how much detail it wants, how closely it balances each cell. And if you've ever put your battery on a charger and just hit charge or fast charge, then it will charge it, and it takes a lot less time than if you put it on balance charge. Because when you put it on balance charge, it makes sure to keep each cell as close as possible to the same voltage as it's charging. The good chargers will charge quickly at a certain rate, although balancing throughout till it gets about 80 or 90%, and then the last 10% it dials down to a greater detail and balances it more closely, and that's a better way to take care of your batteries. Okay, so in upcoming videos we're going to talk about some ways that you can charge, some ways that you can discharge, and how that you can measure the battery. There's small checkers that go into the balance port that allow you to check it. Some of these have an audible alarm, and when you plug them into the balance lead, you'll get that audible alarm, and you'll see it'll flash all of them. It'll tell you how many cells, and then it flashes each cell. So this one here is all the voltage is 11.7, so it's a 3 cell. Number 1 is 3.9, 2, 3.9, 3, 3.91, and then it goes back to all, and it'll continue to do that as long as you leave it plugged in. Now that alarm, you can set different settings on this thing so that you can leave this plugged in and stick it to Velcro on the side of the model, and then if you're flying your model, you can set it at 3.7 volts or 3.8 volts, and then when you're flying your model, if you hear that audible alarm go off, then it's telling you, hey, one of the cells has reached the 3.7 or 3.8 cutoff and it's time to land. Some models have a low voltage cutoff built in them so that when you get to that point, it'll start surging the motor. You'll hear it, instead of going zzz, it'll go zzz, 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 and it'll kind of pulse. Or it'll just kind of power down and go to a lower RPM like on the helicopters, and then you have to land. But running it to the low voltage cutoff all the time is not necessarily the best thing. The 80% discharge is a good rule. So that's the basics. Parallel, series, best practices. LiPos hate heat, and just keep in mind, anything where you store these, when you store them fully charged, they used to tell you when you buy them new to charge them up fully charged and leave them fully charged, and that's not good because they'll start building heat. I charge before I go to the field to fly, and if I go to the field and can't fly, then I built a discharger that will discharge them at the house so that I can keep them in the best state possible to take care of them, because they're not cheap and I want them to last as long as possible and get as many cycles out of them. So we'll go over some of these things. I'm going to go through how to charge, how to discharge, and how to store them. Some of the things, ammo boxes, different things. We'll go over some of that in later videos. Thanks for watching Field Sketch. Please like and subscribe.